I'm super excited because today we have the incredibly talented voice actor and lifelong Disney fan. We have Mark Silverman with Ice. You have the Twilight Zone happening in the background.
I wish it was, but it's an old movie on our movie network here.
Oh, okay. You had me at old movies. I'm a big fan. So tell us, I know there's so much to talk about today, but I would love for you to tell the audience like what some of the voices that you've done professionally.
Well, I most of the things that I got when I was a kid doing impressions a lot. And I started to get cast a lot to revoice celebrities that couldn't make their session for some reason. And when I was a kid, I was obsessed with the show Get Smart.
Okay.
Do you guys know that show Get
Yeah.
Smart?
Yep.
And I would watch, and it was a guy named Don Adams. And at 13, I perfected this voice. Would you believe I'm Maxwell Smallage in 86 of Control? Sorry about that, Chief. And I walked around my entire life in 1978 talking like Maxwell Smart. That's all I did. I talked like Maxwell Smart. And then I got older, became a voice actor, and I realized you can make money by doing these sound alike voices. The first big job I had, they brought me into Universal. Okay, there was a time when movies were on television, regular TV more. Like R-rated movies would just be on ABC all of a sudden. You know, The Godfather or Rocky and stuff. But they don't really do that anymore because there's so many other ways to watch movies. But when a movie would be on television that had cuss words, they would have to get the star back to revoice himself and take out the cuss words and put in more family friendly words. So when they couldn't get the people back, they'd get somebody like me who was a voice matcher. And the first big job I did, they brought me in to revoice 80 lines for Al Pacino for the network premiere of a movie called Carlito's Way. And I had to say every line in the movie pretty much like Al Pacino, but take out the bad word and put in the better word.
Okay.
Like there was a scene in the movie where he says to his friend, Dave, you a lawyer man. What the blank is happening to you? And they couldn't put that on TV. So I would go in because they couldn't get Pacino back. And I would stand there with my headphone and they give you three beeps. Beep, beep, beep. And then you start talking. It's perfectly matched up to when Pacino's going to start talking. So the three beeps, and I would go, Dave, you a lawyer man. What the heck is happening to you? And that's what I would do. That is also why if you ever see that version of Carlito's Way, the whole movie Pacino keeps saying, "Forget you, forget you," but he's really saying something else.
And that's you?
Yeah. So if you ever if you ever watch that movie and there's no cussing, that's me.
Gonna
So
have to
I started,
pause. Yeah.
yeah, I started doing a lot of that stuff, and in 1990, oh, this was 93, I did the Pacino job. Then in 94, the Tower of Terror audition came up. And I had been such a big Twilight Zone fan my whole life. I knew I'm very good at doing subtle impressions. I don't overdo it. Like, for instance, Rocky Balboa, how you doing? Just me. I did a lot of work at Sylvester Stallone. I revoice him for movies too. But you don't want to go over the top and go, hey, yo, how you doing? You want to make it more subtle in conversation. How you doing? Yo, Paulie, how you doing? Just me, Rocky Balboa, you know what I mean? There's a way to really do that, you know.
So you're
So
not
when Tower of
overacting almost.
Right,
Yeah.
you don't want
Okay.
to do that.
Yeah.
Like when Tower of Terror came up, when I was a kid, comedians with like Rod Serling was a very big impression people would do. But they would always overdo it. This is Rod Serling with the Twilight Zone. You know, they stiffen up their mouth like Twilight Zone. And I knew that's not what they wanted. They wanted a more conversational Rod Serling. This is the Twilight Zone, Hollywood, 1939, amid the glitz and the glitter of a bustling young movie town at the height of its glory. So I knew what they wanted. So they had an audition with some woman in Beverly Hills. It was like she just became an agent, and I read it into a tape recorder. And it's so hard to get these jobs. I didn't even think about it. But then, like 2 weeks later, she called back and said, "Hi, Mark. That Twilight Zone job you came in on, they want to see you at Imagineering for another audition." And I had been such a Disney fan my entire life, just getting into Imagineering was such a big deal to me. I was such a Disney fan. I used to go to the parks with a tape recorder, a little
Oh,
tape recorder about this, and I would record the rides just to practice the voices. I mean, no one knew why I did that, but I knew every monologue, every dialogue of every pirate and Pirates of the Caribbean, everything.
so
I knew every
you,
seafood spiel.
yeah. Did you dream? Was it like a goal of yours to work for the Walt Disney World Company as a young
Yes,
kid?
yes. I wanted to do something to bring Disney magic to life. And I mean, I when I was 13, I'd walk around going, "Someday the people mover may be carrying you through stores and shopping malls in your own community." You know, I knew every word of everything. So then, when this audition came up and I got to go into Imagineering, it was such a big deal for me. And they brought me in, and I went through the whole script of one of the Twilight Zone monologues, not yet the Tower of Terror script. And then so, about 2 weeks after that, the casting woman from Disney called and said, they really like you. It's now down to like 20 people. I guess they were seeing a lot of people. And then, like a week after that, after I did another audition, they'd say, "They really like you. It's down to 6 people." So then they brought me in for one last audition, and I had to read for Joe Dante, the director, and some other Disney people in this very large stage. And when I did that, they came out into the lobby and told me that I got the job. And it was quite special for me knowing that I was the voice of a Disney ride. I couldn't believe it. No, nobody else could believe it either because my whole growing up was Disney and TV and Disney. And Twilight Zone was my favorite show. So it's like two of my childhood obsessions became a weird reality.
Yeah, but
That's
you worked hard for it because you were constantly going to the park and recording and practicing, and like the hard
Yeah,
work paid off. It wasn't like it just happened and it was luck. Like you put
that's
a lot of work in.
right. Yeah, I did. And I still have a lot of those cassettes. I mean, people don't even know what cassettes are anymore. That's how old it was.
did you
You were
know
you were the original Disney vloggers. Like
vlogger?
you were going there recording and
That,
like doing all that
you
content
know,
before it was popular.
I, I think there's some truth to that. Yeah.
Definitely. Did you know when you were auditioning, did you know it was for an attraction or did you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I knew it was for a Disney attraction based on the Twilight Zone. And I wasn't that familiar with the Disney MGM studios at the time because I had only been to Walt Disney World once in 1980.
Okay.
And so when they said it was a Twilight Zone ride, of course I was very excited, and they told me what it was about, but there weren't that many drawings or anything, so they just kind of told me what was going to happen. And then when I got the job, it was about a month after I got it at the actual recording session. So I had a book with Rod Serling's monologues from each Twilight Zone episode, and I would look up because this is before internet really came about. So I would look up on TV Guide what episode the Twilight Zone was going to be, and then I would read the monologue with Rod Serling. Like I really went out of my way to perfect this thing.
Did you feel at any moment like even though the Twilight Zone is epic and everything, were you confused on how they were going to make this work in Disney? Like were you thinking maybe this wasn't a great idea just because it was going to be in that park? It was nothing like they've ever done before.
Right. Well, I knew it was going to be something special because it was Imagineering doing it. So I felt like I was in good hands. Plus, Carol Serling, Rod Serling's widow, was in on the whole thing.
Oh.
So she made one. She like made she was part of making the decision to bring me in there. So I was extremely excited about all aspects of this thing.
When you're talking about your childhood in Disney and everything, what was did you, did you grow up in the West Coast, closer to Disneyland? So,
Yeah, and Los Angeles.
gotcha. So what were some of those memories, like what were your fondest memories, and what do you think that kind of translated into growing your career?
Well, I loved Disney. I loved the movie Pinocchio. I think that's still the greatest animated movie ever made.
Mhm.
And I had this complete fixation on Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh
I
yeah.
Yeah, and the Disneyland version is so special, and the last attraction Walt worked on. So I wanted to contribute something that made people feel like they were on a great ride. But this is years before Tower of Terror came about. So going to Disneyland was so special to me. And then when my dad took me to Walt Disney World in 1980, that was incredible. But that was before Epcot opened.
Mm.
But I went on Pirates a whole bunch of times in Florida, and I loved that. And I went on Mansion a bunch of. I mean, it was I was so people really they would say to me, "What do you want to do? Live in Disneyland?" Like I'd say, "Yeah, probably."
Why not?
Well, yeah, why not?
That's incredible. So I love that you love Pirates of the Caribbean, the Disneyland. We say the same thing. So we are very blessed. We go to both East Coast and West Coast, but we always say the West Coast, and just being able to walk in Walt Disney's footsteps and see the attractions, especially things like Pirates, just has a little bit more of story in it. And I don't know if it's because of the size of Disneyland. They had to improvise by doing a little bit. Everything seems a little plussed up because they have to compensate for the size being smaller. I don't know. It's my favorite. I
Yeah.
love it.
Well,
So
yeah. There's what? No,
no. So how did you?
It's like the sequel, right? Like,
Yeah.
is the sequel ever better than the original? Like any part twos ever better than part ones?
only Bride of Frankenstein was better than Frankenstein.
Great answer. That's a great answer. So when you decided that this is something you wanted to do for your career, how did you get started? Did you go through training? I mean, you can. It seems like switch it off on and off so easily. I don't know how that happens.
Yeah.
Hey, how do you know you
I got
sound like them? Because a lot of people do impressions and they think they sound like them, but
Yeah.
they really don't sound
Yeah.
like them.
Right.
But I knew I knew I did because I had a certain ability to do that. Like when I perfected the Maxwell Smart voice, and then the Disney voices, and then the Rocky Balboa, and Al Pacino, and I'm Ronald Reagan. Well, yes, and all that. I knew I had a talent, and I got hired at a radio station in LA called KROQ, and I would do phone calls and in different characters and things. So I knew I was pretty good when I was about in my early 20s. And then I got an agent and started getting other work. So it really, I'm always with a tape recorder. Now that we have phones, I'm always recording myself on the phone and playing it back. The phone will record you so well. You know, it's such a great
Yeah.
technology now. So it's always been tape recorders has always been such an obsession with me. So I knew I was going to end up doing something with my voice. And my dad is 91 and he still has a voice. He sounds exactly like he did when he was 40.
That's amazing.
Wow.
So yeah, so I like he didn't turn into an old man. And I don't know when people do start talking like old men because another friend of mine, I was friends with Peter Renaday who passed away recently. Peter Renaday was the voice of Henry the Bear in the Country Bear Jamboree, and the voice of Mark Twain, and the voice of the old submarine ride at Magic Kingdom. And he had a really good voice like this. It does make me wonder, when do people start talking like an old man?
It's funny you say
And
that
when
because
do
if
I have to start doing it?
you have a great
Yeah.
podcast voice, like if it was me and I was you, I'd be like, "Hey, look who's on the podcast this week! It's Sylvester Stallone," and I'd like make myself feel a lot more popular.
Yeah.
That's right. Yo. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Hey, give him an
Yeah.
idea,
Yeah,
Bruce.
top 10 podcast right there.
There
It's
you go.
Mark and Sylvester Stallone
There you
co-hosting a show.
Right.
So, you must have felt so thrilled when you got the job, but also pressure, right? Because the Twilight Zone is iconic. So, how did you overcome those? I mean, I'm assuming here, but
Well, it was exciting as all hell for me to know I was the voice of a Disney ride. And then when the ride opened in 94, I went down there and stayed at the All Stars Sports Resort, which was the new hotel out there, you know. And when the night of the big event, the grand opening, I don't even know how I got through that without passing out. And I always say that because it was so to be that crazy about Disney rides and then know I was going to be hearing my own voice on the ride. It was so crazy. And I had my tape recorder with me and I was going to say, I'm going to be recording my own voice. It was weird. But then there was this huge event, like a Broadway show, and food catered from the Brown Derby, and fireworks going off, and celebrities and reporters. And then an announcement went on, and the Tower of Terror was just looming there in the background. An announcement came on that said, I still have the tape because I recorded the whole thing. It went, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Sunset Boulevard and the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror are now officially open. And everybody started walking towards the attraction. And of course, it was so dreamlike for me when I got into the queue area, then into the lobby. Because back then, it was such a different world. Now there'd be 9 million photos of the ride before it even opened. But back then in 94, it wasn't like that. So I really didn't know anything what it was going to look like, except for on the Disney World Christmas Parade in 93, they did an upcoming attraction thing with Regis Philbin. And that was the only time they had some sort of an idea what it might look like. But still, I had no idea the lobby was going to look like that.
So you were shocked when you went in there for the first time.
Yes, it was completely overwhelming, breathtaking, surreal, all the words you can think of. And it was very emotional time for me. When I finally heard my voice in the library area, that was just even more intense and incredible. Then when I got on the attraction and heard my voice there, the whole thing was just like a crazy Twilight Zone Disney dream.
That's amazing.
And even when I talk about it now, I can't believe it.
I know. I'd be like, are you like, when you go on the attraction, do you like bump people and be like, that's me?
By the way.
Well,
I
used to do that a little, but I grew out of that stage, and I still love to go on the ride. And they usually give me a nice ride by myself right when the park is closing. And it's great to be on with people screaming and all that, but there's something very personal about going on alone and hearing my own voice blasting back as I'm going into the twilight. It's so weird. I hope I can describe it. It's fantastic. I love doing that, especially at night, because you don't think anybody's watching, and it's more scary up there.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm thinking about it now. We just shared a video on our Instagram stories, and it was just the ride through a little bit, and it just gives me the goosebumps every time. I can imagine being there alone, right?
That's wonderful.
So
yeah, I even do it. What? I even do it in sometime in regular elevators.
Wait, can you do it now? Can you do it? All right,
can.
let's stay quiet. All right, ready? Go. Pretend we're in an elevator.
You were the passengers on a most uncommon elevator, about to ascend into your very own episode of The Twilight Zone. One stormy night long ago, 5 people stepped through the door of an elevator and into a nightmare. That door is opening once again, but this time it's opening for you.
That's amazing.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, I've done it in crowded elevators, and it gets like an applause because it brings a little unexpected Disney magic into people's lives.
I love that. What a great way you never know if somebody's having a bad day after they hear that. It just kind of makes them smile, right? That's just amazing. Were you able to, so it doesn't sound like you were able to visit during the constructing of it. Like, you just saw it
No,
completed?
I didn't, but I went to the constructing of it in California Adventure when they built that one.
Oh, you were the
Oh,
voice of that one too?
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, sure. Because he was a Twilight Zone ride at one point.
Well, you must
right.
have been sad when they turned it into Guardians.
Yeah, I wasn't happy about that, but it does make it more special when I get to Florida.
Yes.
And I think they do need some of that, right? That separation between having different elements in each park, because I think, like you said, it makes you appreciate it a little bit more, at least for us anyway,
Yeah,
too.
that is true, right?
Well, if they
But
ever
I
change the
love.
Florida one, there's going to be problems on our end.
Yeah, we're going to definitely protest. So,
That's what I say. Yes. Okay. Good.
have you had to go back and re-record lines for the attraction, or
No, but um, there were all sorts of promotions and things. Actually, when I did the dialogue for the first Tower of Terror, about 3 months after that, there was a big promotion at Walt Disney Studios, and I had to narrate that. And when I narrated that, this other thing, they called back from Imagineering and they said, "We think you're even better at it now. We want you to come back and re-record the whole attraction," because that it had been like another 3 months of practicing. So they
Wow.
brought me back to do it all over again, and that was pretty great.
How
So
many
there's
lines are there in the ride? Like how much time did it take for you to record all of the lines?
it only took about 2 hours to record the whole attraction.
Wow. So that wasn't that many
Yeah.
takes and you nailed it.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's what he just did now,
Right.
and with no notice.
Right.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Wow. So you talked about the Serling family, and so they had their hand in the whole thing. What was that like working? Like, did you speak with anybody from the family,
I
or?
did.
Oh, you
I
did.
I got to meet Carol Serling and some of her family, and I'm Rod Serling's brother was there, and so we all talked at the attraction, and it was incredibly special for me because growing up, Twilight Zone till this day, it's my favorite show of all time. So just for that whole reason, it was incredible.
Mhm.
I like that. And I ended up working with Carol Serling on other Disney projects. Jordan Peele contacted me because he brought Twilight Zone back for a few years on CBS.
Mhm.
And Carol Serling was an executive producer on that. And they wanted Rod Serling to narrate one of the last episodes. So I did that, and that was great. So it's I still watch Twilight Zone every night on Me TV at 12:30.
That's great. Did you do any other voices for anything in the parks?
Yeah, my voice. Now I have this on. It's on my Instagram page and Facebook page.
Okay.
I'm the voice of. There's a game in front of Pirates of the Caribbean called Treasure of the Seven Seas, and you get a little card and you have to go on a scavenger hunt and find these clues. And every time you put your card over a certain area, like skeletons pop up, cannons shoot out, whatever. But when you put it over the Spanish helmet in front of the attraction, my voice shoots out. Fuego, I say, and the cannons shoot off. You have not seen the sinking ship with the magical key of the spell. I have a whole routine. And the last time I went, because I memorized my dialogue, I stood in front of my own voice and I acted it out and lip synced myself. And I thought that would be pretty fun to do that. And it came out pretty well. But I hope you can find it. It's on my Instagram
What's
We'll
your
page.
find
Instagram?
we'll find it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you just put in my name and it pops up.
Okay,
Yeah,
well
we
we'll
have
link it
it.
up. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
link it up. We'll share that as well because that's pretty fun.
So that's crazy because your favorite, I'm assuming, other than the Tower of Terror being your favorite, right?
Yeah,
Your other favorite is Pirates of the Caribbean, and now you were able to kind of do something with that
yeah,
role, right? Because
I did. Yeah.
one of the questions I had is if you could narrate or voice any other Disney attraction, which would it be? So I'm
What would be
assuming,
that?
yeah.
It would be that. I know every single line of that ride.
Or Peter
My
Pan,
favorite. I love the
Pinocchio.
Peter Pan. I like that too. I love all those Fantasyland dark rides.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we need a little of that voice in those dark rides too. That's what's missing.
You know what I love too, and I don't know who did the voice for it, but it's not there anymore. It was, "You are not the first to pass this way, nor shall you be the last. Those who find Norway find future and a value." You remember that from Maelstrom?
Yes.
I
But
think that
that
was you.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, but that was turned into the Frozen ride. I
Yeah.
don't know who did that voice, but I loved that ride, Maelstrom.
That was a great attraction. It took me a long time to kind of get over the change of Frozen. Frozen's very pretty, and I get it with the kids nowadays. They can relate to the movie and everything, but that I do miss that iconic attraction. That's it was like a surprise. Like you weren't expecting anything when you're kind of wandering through the country. So I think that's what was really
Yep.
interesting about it.
My
Did you
my
have?
my, fa- my favorite place in all Walt Disney World is the World Showcase at night. I just think that's a great place to be.
It is. Epcot's a pretty nice place at night, especially the World Showcase. You got all the food, you got all the sounds and sights. It's amazing.
Just
I
can't hit it at
know.
a special event.
Like food and wine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gets a little
It's a little
chaotic.
chaotic then.
But other than that, although some people like the energy of it, the crowds and everything. So do you have any behind the scene moments with working with the Disney Imagineers for these projects? Like anything that stood out to you that you'd like to share?
Well, so I had called Imagineering so many times when I was a teenager because I was to ask them questions because I can't stress
You just
enough.
picked up the phone and called them?
What?
Yes. I
That's
can't stress enough how different the world was back then. Because now you would just Google Imagine, we'll go on YouTube and watch interviews with Imagineer, but nothing was like that then. So at the time it was called WED Enterprises. And I would call this number in Glendale and I'd say, does anybody, I really would just say, I want to talk to someone about Pirates of the Caribbean. And they would put an Imagineer on the phone, and and it sounded like these guys were like painting figment models for Epcot because it was like about 1980, 79. And they would talk to me, and I'd say, like, how tall's the auctioneer? How deep's the water? How tall's the ceiling? It got to a point where they would come to the phone and they would say, "Yes, Mr. Pirates of the Caribbean, what can I do for you today?" And I would ask a million questions. And they were so nice. And one of the publicity people, a woman at WED, which stands for Walter Elias Disney, they sent me that publicity book that used to have Pirates of the Caribbean about it, and it used to sell at all the parks. And she sent me one. I already had one, and she sent me another one, and that was great. And since then, I've had Mark Davis sign it, and Marty Sklar signed it,
Oh,
Wow.
and Atencio signed it. I mean, it's a great thing to have. Um, so I would call Imagineering so much. So by the time I got into Imagineering, it was kind of weird because I thought, God, I wonder if any of these people here that I used to call constantly or
they know
walk
you
around.
were that, and they would answer and take your questions.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but if you think about it, I'm sure it wasn't like today, like he said, the YouTube and the internet, like everybody knows the Imagineers. Back then, people probably didn't know who they were.
Yeah, but
Yep.
can you call them today
Right.
in today's world and say hi? That's just incredible.
I,
What
I
grit.
I would call old Disney animators, and their names would be in the phone book, and I would just call and talk about Disney animation.
Oh my
That was
Wow.
gosh.
incredible too. You had to do stuff like that back then.
Yeah, you really had to push in, but that takes a lot of nerve and grit and just
Yeah,
never give up, perseverance. I mean, that's incredible gift to have, right?
right.
That's why you were able to do what you do. I mean, that's incredible. Well,
Yeah, you're right.
we
Thank you.
we have some questions from our friends from Unlocking the Magic. So if you don't mind, I can. There's
All
about
right.
8 questions. If you don't mind, do you have some
Okay.
time?
All
Okay.
right. Yeah.
So the first question is from Chris. Do you get annoyed when people talk along in the pre-show on Tower of Terror, or are you like, dang it, they memorized my lines?
Yeah. I usually say, quiet, I'm talking. But I like it when I hear it. I find it, I mean, you know, to get a job in voiceover where anybody even remembers it, but to have all these people know what you're saying, I find it very exciting. I like that.
I've got to be there when you're there. I want to hear you say, "Hey." Okay, this next question, this is one question that came from two people. Amy and Patrick asked, "Were you a fan of the original Twilight Zone before you were hired? And if so, what is your favorite episode?"
Well, of course, as I said, I love Twilight Zone. My favorite episode, it's very difficult to come up with that, but I love Stopover in a Small Town is a great one. That's where two people wake up in this city where no one, they can't find another person and they don't know where they are. And all they hear is a child laughing. And then there's a very nice surprise of why they're there. I love that one. I love the Robert Redford episode, Nothing in the Dark. Interestingly enough, there are some episodes I wasn't crazy about when I was a kid
Hmm.
because they're too talky and maybe a little more mature than, I'm watching at 11 years old, And the episodes I didn't quite get when I was a kid are now my favorite episode. It's like you grow with the show,
Hmm.
which is really interesting. There's another episode with Dennis Weaver, and it's called Shadow Play, and that's one of my top three. He has the same dream every night that he's going to the electric chair.
Oh,
And I didn't get that as a kid so much.
yeah.
And now when I watch it, it's just the most fascinating 24 minutes. Unbelievable.
Well, that's great
So, yeah,
because you can
well, those
revisit
would
the
be my
show.
three.
Yeah, you can revisit as an adult and still find joy out of it because you're getting it now, or right? I
Yeah,
love that.
right.
I love it.
Was
Yeah.
the electric chair insinuating like work? Like he didn't like what he did and he was going to work every day the next day?
Maybe. Yeah.
You're like, how do you
But
get
but
that?
what's fascinating about that episode is the district attorney comes in, and of course it's a dream, and he says, and Dennis Weaver is freaking out in it because he can't stand it because he's so scared of going to the electric chair. And they ask him in the episode, is go, well, if you know it's a dream, why don't you just enjoy it? What's the big deal? And then his answer is so great. He says, because when you're in a dream and you're falling or something, it seems real. So it's like Rod Serling figured out every angle of this episode of what it would be like to have that dream every night. It's one of the most fascinating things I think ever in the history of TV, this episode.
Okay, put that down on your list, Bruce. I don't think you've seen that one.
No, I haven't. I
All
have to
right.
put that on TV tonight.
All
What
right.
channel did you say?
It's called Shadow Play.
Shadow
Shadow
Play.
Play.
Okay.
Okay, Jason asked, have you written Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, and are you bummed about the change? Indifferent? How do you feel?
Well, I am, of course it bothered me, yeah. But I honestly have never been on the attraction.
Really? Yeah. Is it because you're just so bummed about, like, you just don't want to even go
It
there,
might be,
or?
yeah, it might be too much for me. I don't know. I'm an emotional guy. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe someday I will.
I can understand that, definitely. Okay. Kim asks, have you done Rod Serling's voice on any other projects?
Yeah. Well, I did it on the Jordan Peele Twilight Zone. And then I did it on all the commercials that were for the Tower of Terror. And I've done a lot of other things, and I can't remember what they are. But the Disney ones were the best ones. And the Jordan Peele show was good. I got to do 2 episodes of that, and it's always such a thrill. But I get a lot of that Rod Serling because it wasn't a big stretch for me to do that. I could just very easily go into the Twilight Zone. There was a certain way, a certain rhythm, and I already had a voice that would do that. So yeah, it was extra nice for me.
That's super. What's the hardest? This is a question from Bruce, which is me. What's the hardest voice you've ever had to do?
Well, there are some voices that might hurt your voice after a while. A lot of video games do that. If you have to do like these battle scenes and your voice is raw, and then you look and there's 12 more pages of, oh, this
Oh no.
screen, it hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be painful. But as far as most of the voice work, nothing really is that difficult except for those battle cries in
Yeah.
video games, I
The
think.
repetition of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Christopher asks, I didn't see you do anything, but he asked, what is the phrase that you use to dial in on your Rod Serling impression or any other warm up rituals?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, um, well, usually I'll say something like, "What you're looking at is a nightmare," or something like 19. Okay, a lot of the words with Rod Serling that have the word "for" in it are really good to say. Like if I said, for some reason, 1934 is better than saying 1935, 1937. For some reason, 1934. There's a that anything that rhymes with four is a good a good way to get into it. And I would also just go through the monologues. I know all of pretty much. I know about probably about 40% of them. So I'll just do that. Usually I'll just say, "This is Rod Serling with the Twilight Zone. In just a moment, this elevator door will open to another dimension." Yeah.
Oh my
So it's
gosh.
so much a part of me. Even when Twilight Zone's on every night, I still do the monologue with it because I don't know, I can't watch it without doing that.
This one is, do you use the Rod Sterling voice in your everyday life just to freak people out? I think you said that about the elevator earlier.
No, yeah, right, right. No, I do my voices a lot when I'm on the phone. A lot of people, if I'm calling like my, this is something that's really moving to me, I gotta say. If I'm calling like to ask a question to my car insurance people, or I'm calling some kind of customer service line, the people that do these customer service jobs, you got to figure they're sitting there talking to people, very straight, rather boring conversations. And if I can add something to the conversation, a little Rocky, Twilight Zone, whatever, they get. It's very nice for these people. I've had so many people say, "Sir, you've really made my day," and by because
Oh,
they're laughing.
yeah. I
And I'll
love
say,
that.
thank you very much, and keep your hands and arms inside the vehicle, and please refrain from And they like that. People like to laugh, so it makes me feel good to do that.
Please continue. I love that. Like I really think that nowadays there are a lot of people that just I don't know, it's like they're trying to just be so serious all the time and life's not that serious, right? And so hearing
Yeah,
you talk like that and just making people smile is such a gift. So I really appreciate that. Okay, Michael
yeah,
says, is it true you can recite every word from Rocky?
yes,
Wow.
They have a
That's
great memory.
yeah,
yeah,
that's
it is
incredible.
true.
Sue, we need to know what your diet looks like, what the nutrition is for that great memory. Georgine asks, when you ride Tower of Terror, which is your favorite, the daytime or nighttime?
Well, that's a nice question to ask, and of course, nighttime. There's an old Disney special called Disneyland After Dark. And then and they say in the episode, this is like from the 60s, and there's a certain magic that happens to the parks at night. I think everything at every park is better at night. If I had my
Agreed.
choice, walking through the World Showcase at night is so much better than the day. Well, I don't like to be hot. That's one
Yeah.
thing. Going the World Showcase at night is such, I mean, that's about as good as it gets. And I love now, this is a real good plug for the Skyliner.
Hmm.
Walking, when you're exhausted at World Showcase and you used to have to walk all the way to a future world and the parking lot and the bus, to just walk to the UK and get on a 2 minute wait, 5 minute wait for your Skyliner and just fly back to Pop Century, that is so great.
You're
That is
absolutely right.
thumbs up all the way.
Yeah, you're right.
Definitely.
Connie's a little afraid of them because she's a little height sensitive, but I
That's a
like those.
good way to say it.
Yeah.
It did take me a long time to just height wise and just even the Tower of Terror riding. Like I always say to our listeners for the longest time, I love the story. I love the queue. I could listen to you for hours in there, but riding was terrifying. The drop I never loved, but I finally conquered my fear somehow. It just like a switch happened and now I
I
love it.
understand that because
Yeah.
there's rides that I don't I don't think I could. I'm not sure if I could handle that Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster thing.
Yeah, intense. It's an intense one.
The
Yeah,
Cosmic
I'm nervous.
Rewind.
Yeah, because I went on Everest, and some cast members took me on, and they almost had to walk me off it.
Oh.
I couldn't handle the backwards part. It was too much for me.
Have you seen the movie Ant-Man 2? The sequel to the first one?
No.
Okay, well that's the only way I could describe how I feel after Cosmic Rewind. There's a character that kind of is difficult from she's basically somewhat detached from her physical body and she kind of goes back and forth and that's how I feel. So if you're nervous about it, I would say maybe do some other things to build up that stamina, ride Everest a few
Did
more
you go on
times.
again after that?
Yes. Because
You
I'm
did.
nuts. I usually we have teenagers and they somehow as they gotten older they kind of guilt trip me into doing certain things that I probably would normally never do and they're like, we're getting
I
older,
see.
mom. Yeah.
Well, do you remember the maybe you've seen videos of it? The Tower of Terror used to have a lap bar.
No, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that
Yeah.
either.
So if you get on that ride and there was like a kid gets on, and let's say there's a big adult and a big adult on one side, it only stops on them. And the kids got all this room to fly off the seat. And it's intense now, but when that bar was there, you really flew out of the thing.
Oh my gosh, I
Wow, I
can't
can only
imagine.
imagine because with the seatbelt, you still kind of get out of your seat a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, right.
You're floating for it feels like an eternity, right? In the dark especially. Wow. That's intense. I never knew that.
Here's a
Yeah.
question, Mark.
I, I,
Are you a? Okay,
but,
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, Mark.
no, what was I saying?
I was gonna. Nah, I'm gonna ruin the flow now. No,
Oh, you just ruined it,
yeah,
Bruce.
sorry about that.
I can't take them
Oh.
anywhere.
Well,
This is how it goes. I want to know. So, okay, I have a question for since Bruce got to ask a question. Now. Okay. On a recent social media post, you shared a message saying something like interrupting today's programming. I was wondering, can you do
yes.
something like that? Maybe using unlocking the magic. I just want to hear it. Interrupt it. I love that era.
Oh yeah,
I grew
that
up.
was to that because when you have a birthday on social media, everybody thanks you. So
Yeah.
I do it in a video to just get it done with. So I did do something like that. I think it was. We interrupt this broadcast so Mark Silverman can say thank you to all his Facebook friends who wished him a happy birthday. You are so wonderful, and I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Love that.
That's great.
I could listen to that all the time. I actually played it for our daughter. I talked about our teenagers. I played it, and she goes, I love that, Mom. That sounds, like the olden days." I talk
Well,
about
yeah,
that a lot. Yeah.
you have a kid that said something about the olden days. That's pretty neat.
Thank you. I really try. I grew up. I was the youngest out of three siblings, and we had quite an age gap. So I grew up really close to my dad, who loved, Honeymooners and all the older shows on TV, Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
So I grew up that way, and I really found it really important to showcase that to my kids. And
That's neat.
thank
Great.
you.
I
Yeah.
have a few things on my Instagram page where I do old voices. I love, you know, people don't have voices like that anymore.
No.
It was like President Nixon is going to resign, and Vice President Ford will take over, or even commercials like Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat, Maxwell House coffee, good to the last drop. I miss those kind of voices, and
Well, you're still
voices like
around. You got to do it.
yeah,
I think Bruce gave
yeah,
some great
you're
ideas,
right.
right?
I know they always say in voiceover, "Don't be announcery." It's like, well, why?
We need that. We definitely need that. And I can tell you with kids, that have grown up hearing that, they do find it nostalgic and special. So I think that it needs to be done more and more. So if you did more YouTube or a podcast, you definitely have some fans. I know that.
I would love that.
Yeah.
And there was also a way of talking like Cecil B. DeMille was an old director, but a lot of people in the 30s and 40s had sort of a voice like this. Greetings from Hollywood, Lux Radio Theater. I'm on the set with Charlton Heston doing the movie The Ten Commandments. Like, voices were a little more interesting back in these days. I don't
Yeah.
know what happened.
Well,
I want to bring it back.
you should.
Maybe video, because back then people weren't on video as much, right? It was more just you had to sell the message through the voice.
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing, right? Because radio dramas were a big thing back then. So actors had bigger, more interesting voices because they had to do a lot of radio.
Yeah.
But now I can't even imagine if radio was today, because a lot of the voices of actors, they're not distinguished enough where you can understand what they're saying like they did back then. I like old stuff.
Yeah,
I
same.
do.
Yeah. So, do you have any advice for someone that's aspiring to be an actor or a voice actor in today's climate? Have you seen anything that you would do?
Well, it's just to be as obsessed with it with your own voice as possible. I can't go one day without recording myself and listening to myself. I just can't. I can't. Even in my kitchen, I will just recite scenes from Rocky or War of the Gargantuas. You got to be a big fan of Japanese monster movies to know War of the Gargantua. I know every word to them. And so if you're not obsessed to that degree, I wouldn't even bother getting into it.
Be passionate.
That's the way
You're obsessed and you're passionate. Yeah.
The passion is really what it's all about. It's like Walt, I mean, the passion he had just to make things move was incredible. From watching Mickey Mouse in the 20s to watching the whale chase that ends Pinocchio, it's fascinating. Because how did it go from that? It was not that long that it took animation to go from Mickey running around to Pinocchio. And I never can even understand how that was how the animators even knew how to do that, because it wasn't like everybody was doing it before them. Because now animators look back to the Disney guys,
Right.
but who did they look at? It's been so mysterious to me. But yeah, passion is the key to all of that.
I love that. Be obsessed, be passionate, just work hard at it, just like you did, and never give up if you really want to do that. I love that advice. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Tell us where I think you said earlier before we started recording, you have a website that our friends from Unlocking the Magic can follow.
I have a website, marksilvermanvoice.com, and it's got all my demos and voices and all that sort of thing.
Awesome. And a lot of our listeners love IMDb, and I will tell them to go on there too as well and check you out on there as well.
Yeah, good. Do that. IMDb is great. There's not a day I don't watch some show or movie and have to immediately go back and see if I can find something.
10 stars, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yep.
Well, I really thank you again. It's been wonderful. I hope we get to meet maybe someday in person. I got to ride Tower Tower with you.
Yeah,
someday.
right?
No, no pressure, but
Yeah.
just let us know when you're there. I'll be there in a second.
We'll get our own elevator. That would
There
be
you
great.
go.
That would be fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is great, Mark. I appreciate you joining us on the podcast. It was really great to talk to you.
All right, thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.